Hello, are we ready for a panel discussion? We've had some individual keynotes, now it's time to have a conversation. I have an amazing panel because what we've talked about is from a university's perspective, how SDGs might be integrated into their strategy, how they might be viewing it. We've looked at the global picture, right? How does SDGs actually relate on a UN level? How does it relate to actual business? Now we're going to get some inspiration from our industry because there are some amazing projects, some amazing initiatives happening right now across our sector, and we thought it would be great to kind of dive into a little bit, but also to sort of have a bit of a chat around, you know, what do we need to be thinking about? Where can we come together to really progress the SDGs, progress areas like climate, progress areas such as gender equality, and you know, what are the shared challenges that we can take away today in order to get faster forward now for the future we want. I think that was the summary of Steve's presentation. But before I start, I would like to know the people who are sitting here and also the people on the panel, who's directly responsible for SDGs? Who has a role that has some sort of SDG little sliver? Put your hands up, nice and proud, because this is the first time we have been in a room together.
Rachel, are you meaning in someone's formal job definition or description, or just that you do it?
That you work on SDGs as part of your job role, yeah. Because this is amazing. It's the first time we're in a room together with sustainability people. I was at the coffee break and I was so excited, and I'm excited all the time if anybody knows me, but I was so excited to actually have people who are working on this, who are thinking about this, who are thinking about the same theme. So really, this is such a monumental occasion, and we should all just take a little bit of a break to say, woohoo, us, like amazing. You know, sometimes you get all the data people in the room and they, you know, big themselves up. This is the sustainability group, so, you know, well done, and you managed to avoid the train strike, so that's even better. I'm going to hand it over for each of the panelists are going to do a little bit of an introduction. They're also going to just give you a highlight of what they're working on. Think about your questions, think about the challenges, think about how you might be advancing this, and we'll get into a really cool discussion. So I'm going to hand it over to Cecilia, and she works for, is working on the strategic review of the joint commitment for action on inclusion and diversity in publishing, because we do like a long name for some of these things, but I'll hand it over to you, Cecilia.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm Cecilia, I work for Frontiers, but I'm here representing the RSC joint commitment. I'm just going to call it the joint commitment to spare you all the time. So I'm just going to give you a quick kind of whirlwind tour through the history of the joint commitment for those of you who don't know what it is, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is that we've achieved since we were founded. So the joint commitment really began with the publication of this by the Royal Society of Chemistry. So this framework for action was published in 2020 and was furthering existing work at the RSC. Now, around the time of its publication in June 2020, there was obviously a much broader kind of cultural moment of reckoning following the murder of George Floyd about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what we as publishers can do. And so the RSC decided to share this framework with a series of other publishers that they knew, and they started that work by holding a workshop with 9 or 10 other publishers. And from that workshop came a series of commitments. And these commitments are the kind of foundation of what has now become the joint commitment. So understanding our research community, reflecting the diversity of our research community, sharing successes to achieve impact, and setting minimum standards on which to build. And there's two key things I want to highlight here. So the first is that the focus of the joint commitment is really on our role as publishers, rather than our role, say, as employers. And the second is that this requires, and what we've seen is that we've taken a non-competitive approach. So all of the signatories of the joint commitment have agreed to put competition aside so that we can work on these collectively as an industry, so that we can achieve more together. So what started as a workshop with 9 or 10 publishers is now we have signatories of 58 publishers, and these are publishers of various different sizes, different subject areas, different business models, so it's great to have such broad engagement. So that's the history and the context piece. So, how does it work in practice? Well, under each of these initial ambitions, we have a series of subgroups. So this is just mapping out the current subgroups. They are dynamic, so there are subgroups that existed that no longer exist and others that have just been set up. So our most recent subgroup, the one I'm chairing, is the diversity of the working group. And that's the how, but what is it that we've achieved? So these are just some milestones and achievements since the foundation. So June 2020, we had the initial workshop leading to the joint commitment. You can see here that we have a particular focus on capturing demographic data. So we have a schema for capturing gender data and race and ethnicity. They are publicly available on the website. We put together best practices on author name changes, which have now been widely adopted by a number of publishers. We developed and launched the minimum standards. We've run a series of workshops, and throughout the course of 2023, we've been undergoing a formalisation process with the inaugural steering committee formed. And throughout all of this, there's been a huge amount of collation and sharing of resources. We have facilitated conversations with some of the major peer review systems, such as Scholar One, and in particular, we're now focusing on encouraging the uptake of data collection questions. So more on just a couple of these things. So these are our minimum standards. I'm not going to read them to you. They're available on the website, but just two things to say. So the first is that we encourage all of our members to be working towards adopting these minimum standards, and also that they should make those commitments wherever possible public, so that we understand what it is that they're doing and how they're making progress towards them. And the second thing is on the steering committee. So, as I mentioned, we're going through a kind of formalisation process this year. The RSC joint commitment formed organically. So we've been putting in place a lot of governance, and part of that was the inaugural steering committee. We have just recently had some changes, so this is now out of date as of last week, and we've been meeting monthly to really set the RSC up, and we've just completed our strategic planning for 2024, which we'll be sharing publicly shortly. And I just want to take a brief moment to thank Nicola Nugent, who's been the chair of the joint commitment since its foundation, but is leaving the RSC to take up another role, so will be stepping down from her role on the joint commitment. So that's just a whistle-stop tour. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice Wood, I'm from the Publishers Association, and I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of our sustainability tools that we created for the publishing industry. So our sustainability journey so far, we started our Sustainability Task Force, which is a committee of associate members and members, back in February 2020, so we're close to 4 years of that group. We meet quarterly and we discuss a wide range of issues. We've got some members here today. Rachel is a member as well. And when that group was formed, we came up with a strategy of how to work on sustainability and come up with some sort of tangible outputs. So that was these I'll go through. The Publishing Declares Pledge, which some of you have signed, our carbon calculator, materials matrix, and then hiring me as a sustainability manager to actually work on these things. So sustainability development goals, our tools focus on goals 12 and 13, but the work that the PA does also focuses on goals 4, 5 and 10. Next year we're going to be sort of bringing that all together under the sustainability umbrella because it's been a bit disjointed up until now. So this is our Publishing Declares Pledge. This was put out a few years ago, and actually since I put this presentation together last week, it's gone up by 3 signatures, so we currently have 166 signatures. But we put together these 5 points for signatories to commit to, which is to take action on climate, to protect life on land, strengthen partnerships, educate for sustainability, and advocate for sustainability. So following on from the pledge, we wanted to create some tools so that people could actually work on these 5 points. And please forgive my slides. They're not the prettiest because our tool isn't very pretty, but it's not designed to be beautiful, it's designed to work. So this is the first page of our carbon calculator and materials matrix tool. And this allows our members to calculate and monitor their carbon emissions. This is what it looks like. So it measures scope 1 and 3 fuels, scope 2 and 3 electricity, employee commuting, business flights, business accommodation, scope 1 and 3 vehicles, printed product transport, printed product paper, printed product printing, and printed product logistics. So what it doesn't do at the moment is measure digital, but we are currently working on a digital scoping project to see how we can do this, which hopefully we'll be able to do next year. So So that's our carbon calculator. We also have on the same page a materials matrix, and this shows the most commonly used materials and processes in publishing, and allows members to see the geography, functional unit, recyclability, environmental impact summary, GHG emissions, energy efficiency, biodiversity, water footprint, plastic content, chemicals usage, and certifications of these materials. So this is an educational tool, doesn't require the input of any data, and it's designed to be super user-friendly and shared amongst your teams, people in marketing or operations. And we've had really good feedback on this. Publishers have really enjoyed sort of sharing this amongst their teams and understanding the sustainability implications of different materials. Future plans. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're going to be adding digital to our tools next year, hopefully. We're also going to be adding some colour coding to the materials matrix. Originally, we thought this would be a sort of green is good, red is bad, but through conversations, we've realised things really aren't that simple, so we're thinking about doing a more data angle on it, which I'm sure Rachel will be pleased about. And yeah, as I mentioned, sort of widening our scope on the SDGs, bringing it all together, and yeah, developing the sustainability work at the PA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel, for the introduction there. Yes, so I run BIC, Book Industry Communication, and Rachel has asked me today to talk to you about BIC's Green Supply Chain Committee. But just quickly, for those of you who may not know who we are, we're a members organisation. We sit at the heart of the book publishing industry. We create standards, best practices, and resources to help organisations become more efficient, less wasteful, and hopefully ultimately greener. We hold a unique position of trust, facilitating UK and international industry-wide collaboration to reach agreement on dependable standards and best practice in the supply chain. How do we do that? So we do that in quite a few ways. One of those is running 5 strategic committees, of which the Green Supply Chain Committee is one. The other ones are metadata libraries, digital, and physical supply chain. So today I'm going to talk about the work of the Green Supply Chain Committee. So what is our Green Supply Chain Committee? So it's comprised of industry experts and representatives from, I think it's 29 organisations across the book industry. So that's a selection from publishers, printers, shippers, distributors, booksellers, etc. And they come together to talk about sustainability topics. They've put together our Green Supply Chain Work Plan, and from which all of our projects stem. So we took a bit of time to put that work plan together. If you want more information or a detailed line by line look at it, it's on our website. And our Green Promise, what is that? So again, the Green Supply Chain Committee agreed this. It's our as the book industry's supply chain organisation, we're committed to championing the green agenda and providing organisations with tools and resources to help their supply chains become more sustainable. So, more about our supply chain committee's work. So, it's a rolling schedule of work, and as you can see on the screen there, it has 7 UN SDGs at its heart. I won't read through them all. You probably all know what they are anyway. We haven't looked at the other ones, not that we don't think they're important, but we can only do so much. We also have developed BIC's Green Hub on our website, so we're doing a lot of work in the environmental space, and we wanted to have somewhere really easy to find, and we've put a lot of our resources, we've put all of our sort of green resources and activities into that space. So if you go onto our resource centre on our website, you can have an explore there. So our projects, I said I'd talk about our projects. So we've got those that we've completed, those that we're doing at the moment, those that we're looking at for the future, and we've got other committees as well doing work that indirectly will impact the sustainability space as well. So I'm just going to look at completed and live. So we've got 4 completed and 3 in progress at the moment. I'm whizzing through, so apologies, this is really quick. First one is our environmental accreditation and standards map. What is that all about? As you may or may not know, there are hundreds of standards, accreditations, badges out there to do with the environment, with sustainability, with our workflows, with materials, with energy consumption, etc., etc. And we just wanted to make some sort of sense of them all. So this map is a curated map. We've weeded out, we've extensively scrutinised all of the badges, standards, schemes out there, and the map only includes those that we believe are credible. We applied an extensive criteria to all of them, and we weeded out any that we considered that were greenwashing data. So you can find out more on there. You can find out, you can access this through the map itself, or you can just go straight to the badge or area that you're interested in. So find your place in the supply chain, find the area that you're interested in. So here we're looking at paper. Look at the badge you're interested in, let's say FSC, then you can find out more about FSC. That's sort of summary level. Then you can click through to even more information. And it answers a lot of questions. So I think there are 34 questions that it answers. There's a gap analysis as well. So we found that there are some areas of the supply chain that just aren't covered at all. And there's no badge or accreditation that can be applied to a book product in its entirety. There are some that look at, I think Blue Angel looks at production, but it's not specific to books. It's just a sort of a general type of badge. So that's that. It's on our website. The other project we've completed is life cycle assessment as part of our Design for Recycling overarching project. That was to look at what is the industry doing right now with regards to recycling and waste. So we found the research revealed that actually we're doing quite well. We're often close to 100% of materials. This is in terms of the book product itself. Close to 100% of materials being recycled, but there's still more work to be done. That report's available to everyone. It's free, it's online. Part 2 of that project is to look at initial design to manufactured books, so drilling in to a bit more detail to look, okay, so we're not 100%, what else can we do? What are the other areas that we can be looking at? How can we get to BAU? How can we have design for recycling as just BAU? It's just part of common practice. So that's in the review cycle at the moment, but it's covered a lot of areas. It looks at typesetting materials, bindings, etc. Once that's been reviewed, it'll be available for free on our website. Live projects, so sustainability data reporting. I heard one of the presentations before, and sort of a bit of a common theme is how do we know how we're doing? How are we going to report and share information of, about the impact that we're having? So we're looking at sustainability data reporting at the moment. This is a 2-phase project. Phase 1 is just looking at the status quo and researching what different organisation types throughout the book industry supply chain are reporting on. So that work is in progress at the moment. Phase 2 will be to look at, okay, so we know what we're reporting on. What are the areas that the book industry finds most useful to know more about and would like to see regular reporting on, and to try and to amalgamate and aggregate that information and share it so that we can track progress. So that's that project. And then principles of offsetting. This is all about, how do we guide our members and also non-members through through looking at offsetting. Good thing, bad thing. There's divided opinion out there, but we're looking at what are the best organisations that are carrying out offsetting, and how can we provide a curated map again for our members in the wider industry to use to guide their decisions. That's it. Thank you very much.
I'm Jo Wixon of Wiley, but I'm also a director at ALPSP, or ALPS as people tend to pronounce it, the Association of Learned and Professional Society Publishers, and that's why I'm here today. So first of all, before we get into the special interest group I've been invited to talk about, just a little bit about ALPS's sustainability focus. So ALPS was one of the initial signatories of the SDG Publishers Compact and immediately assigned a director with a dedicated remit for the SDGs, which is Alison Lang of BMJ, who, despite this being her home, as it were, is unfortunately not able to be with us today, hence you've got me. There are 3 focus SDGs that, like all of us who are signatories, ALPS chose to focus on. And these are, as you can see from the choices there, very much aligned with ALPS's nature as a trade organisation whose members are organisations themselves. And so these 3 SDGs have been chosen. They align very strongly with ALPS's mission, and so a lot of what ALPS does is inherently fitting with these goals. So just to give you some examples of that, really the actions taken by ALPS to support the SDGs come under 3 different lenses, if you like. The first one is raising awareness, and that's both among its members and beyond. And sometimes that's through making partnerships with other groups, such as the HESI SDG Publishers Compact Fellows. They also look to support publishers by highlighting resources, launching an EDI working group and an SDG SIG, but also by creating new member benefits and discounts aligned with their chosen SDGs. And finally, they look to act in partnership to support publishers in taking action. And so here we're talking about either establishing best practice or amplifying the work of excellent industry groups, such as the ones you've heard about today. And so the resources lists actually include all of the organisations here, I'm happy to say, thank heavens, and their resources. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. So the SDGs and Publishing SIG. This was really launched to offer an open, friendly and informal environment that's supportive of the fact that we can all be at different places in our SDG journey. We might be, as Rachel was saying, someone who has an actual defined sustainability role, which is fantastic. Sometimes we're doing it as a bolt-on to another job because it's something we care deeply about. And all of those types of person are welcome in the SIG. And by mixing people together, that's where we're really learning and sharing. So what we look to do is to share experiences, challenges, and best practice, both among publishers, but also those working with us to achieve our publishing goals. So members and non-members of ALPS can join the SIG. There's no limitation on that. And as I say, we have members with a wide range of role types from different departments within organisations and also from different sizes and types of organisation. We're at about 50 members right now, and anyone here who'd like to join would be very welcome to come along. And I think we've got ALPS's URL at the bottom, and you'd be looking for the special interest groups page there on the green. So, what we've been doing so far, we're a very young organisation, I should say. We only launched in September, so we don't have a fantastic array of resources like the groups here. We'll get there, we hope. So what we have been doing is uncovering needs and blockers, and in some cases we will work to make solutions, but generally we would look to pair up with organisations, and we know already that we have the kind support of STM Social Responsibility Committee and also of the HESI Publishers Compact Fellows when industry groups need to be pulled together to produce something. So we'll be feeding thoughts to both groups. What we've done to date is curated a list of Sustainable Development Goals groups and resources for publishers, which is freely available to anyone from the ALPS website. We've also identified the top 2 topics on the minds of our rapidly growing group members, and those are what we'll discuss and share case studies on in our first topic meetings early in the new year. And these are engaging external stakeholders such as journal editors and society partners and other partners in the publishing process. And the second is, you guessed it, measuring and demonstrating impact, which I think we've all touched on in every talk so far today. So, as you can imagine, I've signed up for Breakout 3 this afternoon on establishing meaningful indicators of success, both for myself and Wiley, but also for the members of our SIG who I'll be reporting back to. Thank you.
So I think you'll agree with me that there is a lot going on in our industry. SDGs tend to be at the heart of a lot of these different industry groups, and I think they definitely overlap in different ways, which is good because SDG number 17 is partnership for the goals, so I'm all about the collaboration. Maybe I can start with the first question, but do think of your own questions that you might want to ask any of the panelists. But I would really be keen to know your challenges. It's inspiring that our industry is addressing these SDGs, that there is such a commitment. I mean, many people, we've had a lot of conversations this morning, we're like, I've seen you on the screen, but I can see you in real life now because we see each other in lots of different meetings, in lots of different organisations. What have been some of the challenges that you've had in terms of getting really concrete projects up and running? Do you find that, resources, for example, at your member organisations are limited, or is this sort of like a massive explosion of activity?
Shall I jump in first? From our side, I think the main challenge is uptake, really, it's implementation, because obviously the scope of us as the joint commitment is really putting this best practice together and trying to encourage our member organisations to take that up. But obviously it's a really mixed group of organisations in very different places along that journey towards diversity, equity, inclusion. You've got organisations with thousands of people with dedicated teams for DEI, and you've got organisations of, tens of people without anyone in a dedicated role. So there's a real mixture in terms of kind of being able to do that implementation. Where we've tried to achieve that is by kind of case studies from some of the organisations best placed to do that implementation, to leverage those resources. And we're very grateful to the publishers who've really been active. So, for example, a thank you to Elsevier for trialling the ethnicity and race questions. They trialled it with 10,000 of their members. So, we're kind of relying on those larger organisations to help kind of empower the smaller organisations in terms of implementation. But that's the key challenge, is the uptake.
Alice and Karina, have you had similar challenges?
Shall I go? Yeah. Similar to you. When we set up our Green Supply Chain Committee, we had, again, different levels of organisations. We started off with a lot of organisations that were on, quite a fast journey towards their sustainability, and then we started to try and reach out to other organisations that hadn't even started, and some of the feedback was, well, we haven't done anything, we can't sit on your committee. And I really tried to encourage those organisations to join, because it's like, well, that's exactly why you need to be on the committee. And then the projects, we find that sometimes, again, to your point, sometimes you've got organisations that have the resources to send a person to help execute and deliver the project. But other organisations, they're struggling because they're a small team or they're a smaller organisation. They don't have the dedicated resources or the dedicated time to put to that. So that's the challenge. And also, particularly when we were looking at the standards, the accreditations, the badges, there's a lot of information out there. And we're finding, obviously, I think we knew we would find it, hence the project, but the reporting project, the impact and data reporting project that we're working on, there's so much information out there, and it's just trying to make sense of everything. And I think what BIC is trying to do in all of its projects is curate a path through all of that. There's a lot of great work going on, there's a lot of great projects and initiatives, and it's just trying to make it perhaps not so overwhelming for the smaller organisations that want to do something, who really, enthusiastic and really want to make a difference, but perhaps don't know where to start. So I think that's the challenge, just making sense of all the sustainability noise that's out there.
Yeah, I'd echo what's been said so far on that scale piece, that for smaller companies or a small society publisher, for example, that's going to be bolt-on work on top of their normal job, and it might be one person catching all of it, or all 17 of the SDGs, and that's or what they can tackle, and that's a big ask, and so that's one of the reasons why we pulled the SIG together, was for there to be this space where someone should be able to come and say, I want to do something, I don't know what yet, help, and to feel comfortable and in a supportive environment to do that, and they're surrounded by people who can direct them in the right place. The other thing I would say is awareness. There's still amazingly a lot of people who don't yet really know about the SDGs or don't know what they can do about them, and we see this as well as the HESI Publishers Compact Fellows. When we go to an event, I normally ask how many people in the room can put their hand up and say they know the 3 SDGs that their organisation chose as their focus when they signed the Publishers Compact. And at one very large publishing event, Wayne, Simon and I were the only people able to put our hands up in a full room. And so, yeah, there's work to go. And we keep thinking, should we take our SDGs introductory slide out of the deck? Should we not say that anymore? And yet we still find it's necessary. So again, that's part of the aim of the SIG, is that someone should be able to rock up with no knowledge, but just the drive and desire and feel part of it and at home, and that they're with their people, as you said, Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do with our sustainability task force as well, and I hope that's what we do. We've got almost 200 members, and I'd say there's both an explosion of activity and then also some members who are just not doing anything. And I speak to members every day about their usage of our tools and, you know, where they are with them. And quite often people are saying to me, I don't have time, I don't have the resources, you know, this is a bolt-on of my job, I just don't have time to be doing this, but I do want to. So, yeah, that's where the kind of block is.
And can I just add to that as well? Sorry, so with that point in mind about people's sort of being time poor, one of our challenges is to make sure that we have this rolling schedule of work, our green supply chain work plan, which is a bit of a mouthful, green work plan. We have to make sure it stays relevant. So we need to make sure that what we're working on is important to the people that are working on it, is important to our Green Supply Chain Committee, and then important to our members, but then important to the industry at large. So I think it's not being too rigid about, yes, we've got this work plan, we spent ages putting it together, but being able to say, right, okay, that bit's not working, or we need to move this around, or reschedule, or reprioritise. It's making sure that it's always relevant, because people are so time poor.
And have you seen that topics like DEI or EDI, whatever way we want to talk about it, I mean, that was one that's been on the agenda. I think our industry has always been very open to progressing that, and feel that that's a very directive way of kind of, thinking about an SDG, but then also, thinking about equity, particularly, with the societal changes that sort of happened over the last couple of years. Do you see that prioritisation now? I mean, you had a work group of 10, now you've got all of these people working together trying to implement it.
Yeah, so I think the picture for DEI is a complicated one, both in publishing and more broadly. So a lot of the kind of narrative around DEI work at the moment is that basically kind of from 2020 to kind of the beginning of this year, there was this massive explosion in terms of, people with dedicated roles for DEI, generally. And that actually what we've seen this year is kind of a tapering off of that support, not in publishing specifically, but kind of globally in terms of business. And I think there's a narrative there that, DEI is, it was performative, right, around that time. And I think actually there's a huge number of really passionate and dedicated people for DEI. I'm queer, so for me it comes from my own kind of personal lived experience, but there's other people with other lived experiences or passionate about it because of friends or family, for example. And I think that the challenge that we have, right, is how do we balance what's possible for an individual to achieve versus what's possible for like an organisation to achieve, and where do we lay the responsibility? So, for organisations where you don't have a dedicated DEI role, of which there are many, it's passionate individuals and supporting those individuals. But yeah, I think the picture in terms of DEI is mixed, and it's certainly a challenging space. And obviously there's broader kind of political, posturing around particular topics in terms of DEI. For example, in the UK at the moment around trans rights, that's kind of a hot topic at the moment. So it's certainly challenging, but I think it's a group of passionate people trying to do work that they think that matters.
I think that's a nice segue to some questions from the audience. Yes, Liz.
Hi there, some really great stories today, thank you. And that kind of leads into my question, which is, it feels like there's a real acceleration in action. There's certainly an explosion in committees and working groups and task and finish groups. Do the panel see that going forward, and presumably, hopefully continuing that acceleration? Do the panel see that as a challenge or an opportunity, in terms of working together to make sure that, there's actually space and room for all of these action committees?
Definitely an opportunity. I would be worried if there wasn't this activity. I think more activity is better than less activity. You might be interested to know that we, some of our members, we're very conscious that PA, everybody on this panel is doing, and people in the audience are doing fantastic work on all of the SDGs. But we wanted to make sure, and BIC is all about efficiency, so we just wanted to make sure that we're not doubling up. So our members came to us and said, oh, I think the PA are doing it. Oh, I think, X, Y, and Z are doing this. So we formed the Sustainability Industry Forum, which is where not all, but a lot, we're always open to new members, but a lot of the trade organisations got together and said, well, hang on, let's just make sure we're not all reinventing the wheel together, which is totally against BIC's principles. So we meet on a semi-regular basis, probably about once a quarter, something like that, just to check in with each other and say, right, we're working on this, you're working on that, oh, let's share notes, or okay, you're doing that, we won't do that, because we're both doing, going to be doing the same thing. So that's really helpful, and it's really good to learn from different trade organisations what we're all doing. So definitely an opportunity, I think.
Yeah. And there is quite some glue between the organisations. So in Wiley's case, I'm like a glue person between multiple of these groups. And so if a great idea happens in the one, so for example, the Publishers Compact Fellows were thinking about, should there be a taxonomy or should there be a way of tagging content? Ran a survey to establish need across different sizes of publishers, recognised that none of us in that group had any taxonomy or machine learning AI skills, and went straight to STM through Rachel's help to see if STM would form a working group. And so there's these feedback loops basically between the groups, and that's very much the idea with the SIG again, that if we uncover other needs or resources, we won't immediately try and tackle them in some little unit. The idea would be we would talk with the Social Responsibility Committee, with the fellows, and so on. There are other groups out there. The European Association of Science Editors have an Environment and Social Responsibility Committee as well. So there are connections there, but sometimes they serve different purposes too, I think. Yeah, that multi-stakeholder nature of the fellows, where we have librarians, researchers, and sustainability experts with the publishers, is an interesting angle that brings us something different. As I say, the SIG is more about a safe and friendly space for sharing and learning, and so a lot of what we do, as I said, up there is highlighting the work that's already out there so that we don't get double doing. And so that resources list was a kind of natural thing to create first. What do we all know about, who are we connected with, what do we know is out there? And so new members, part of their onboarding is check the resources, look at all this stuff, and if you still don't see what you need, let's talk, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm on 101 different committees, but I can see why people think, hold on, aren't they all talking about the same thing and doing the same thing? But from someone, personally, in all these different groups, there is really good work being done in all of them. And I can honestly say that, otherwise I wouldn't be in all of them, because I've got things to do with my time. But
I think I do just want to balance that, because I totally agree it's a massive opportunity and it's great to see all the work happening. But I think there are two challenges that I see with this, and I think the first one is it's incredibly overwhelming, potentially. Like, if you're someone who's thinking about getting started and you're thinking, okay, well, I want to get involved in DEI, I want to start in terms of the SDGs, like, where do you begin? How do you find out, who's doing what in what space, what particular areas of focus different, industry groups have? So, for example, for the joint commitment, we're focused on publishers as publishers, but if you're interested in publishers as employers, that's not something that we can help you with. So I think there's a challenge in terms of overwhelm. And I think the second challenge, and my fellow panellists have neatly shoehorned this in, is that actually it's often the same voices who are appearing in a lot of these panels, right? And I think we potentially underestimate how challenging it is for individuals outside of that to get involved. So tentatively, one of the things that we at the Joint Commitment are looking at doing for next year, I say tentatively because we've got a meeting this afternoon to agree our strategic goals for 2024, is to really think about how we get the message out to people who aren't currently involved. So one of the things that we want to do is really understand what is the picture in terms of DEI groups within the industry, what are their particular areas of focus and remit, and to make that information publicly available to people who we don't necessarily commonly interact with, including information about how to get involved. And I think that gateway, I think there's a potential barrier to entry that we've sort of accidentally created, because it tends to be the same people who have the time or resources, or at the organisations who have the time or resources to get involved with this. But I think it's amazing to see all the work getting done, and it's a huge opportunity if we get it right, but I think we have to be cognisant that there are challenges there.
Hi, my name's Daniel Rowe from CSIRO Publishing in Australia. This is fantastic to hear about, and there is a lot going on. I guess my question was about the overwhelming nature of this. In other sectors where the same sort of situation exists, there can be a rating or a features list or something like this that can boil things down to an understandable level, for example in energy, or the health ratings of restaurants and so on. So there's a lot of complexity that's hidden by a simple rating or features list. While there are problems with that, do you think there might be an opportunity for that as a way of describing the performance or otherwise of various parts of the industry?
I mean, Rachel, aren't you working on something like that?
Yeah, so that was
They're
where I
all
was going.
going.
The answer is
So
yes.
I'm happy to take that. So I think what we're seeing now is, in the publishing industry, so this is broader, not just academic, but this is trade and education, we have a data problem, a massive data problem. We don't have an international view of what publishing is. So there's been some work at WIPO, so the World Intellectual Property Office, and the International Publishers Association to kind of give that picture, right? I mean, at this stage, just to give you an idea, we don't know how many books were published in 2022. There are areas in Africa where they sell them out the boot of the car, like it's impossible to get it. But there's more sophisticated areas, like in the UK, where you have point of sale. You can get that information. Now, for academic publishing, it's very different. And so we kind of have this idea, and this goes back to measurement, the only indicators of success is number of units sold, or potentially like number of articles we've published. And it feeds into a lot of the different kind of conversations around, for example, the value of publishing. What is it that we actually do as academic publishers, and then what does that mean? Now, there's some interesting rankings that happen. So a guy called Rudiker has done a lot of work in doing rankings, and they do it by revenue. Spoiler alert, RELX Elsevier #1. It means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. It just means that you're perceived as a mega giant. What's interesting, I think, there is that you start to see some other players coming in. Planetas, for example, massive Spanish publisher. And we're starting to see some different angles being applied to academic publishing. So people are wanting OA dashboards, and STM have done some work in trying to get some indicators around what OA looks like. We don't have anything for SDGs. And it goes beyond just, mapping articles specifically to SDGs, because that's only one part of the picture. Fundamental science may not be mapped to an SDG for about 10 to 15 years. So what does that look like, and how does that evolve? So I think there's an area there. The other thing that's really interesting, the SDG Publishers Compact does an annual survey. They published their 2022 survey results, which was mapping progress across 10 concrete steps, which is like, do you have an SDG lead? Have you selected an SDG? And so you start having that kind of data coming in. But we haven't got like an impact ranking, right? THE and QS both have impact rankings for universities, and we haven't quite looked at it. I mean, is it DEI within our own operations? We don't have that information at this point. That data doesn't exist. Is it the carbon performance? That data also doesn't exist, and certainly not comparable. I mean, you can't compare science-based targets from one company to another company, because it's completely different. So it's like this missing part of data which goes across all of these different initiatives that we haven't quite cracked the nut. And I think that came out in the previous two ones, but now I've talked to much too long, and there's people in the audience who know much more than me. But yeah, to give you a flavour is that I think we will have to have some sort of measurement, and we can define the rules of the game right now, and that's the opportunity I think we have. But we don't have long to do that. I think you have 18 months max to come up with some things that says, okay, SDGs, publishers, these are kind of some proxy measures which could kind of evaluate what that is broader than simply revenue, which is ridiculous at this stage. Yes, at the back.
Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn. I'm from Research for Life, an organization that provides free or low-cost scientific research to our users in the Global South. And so I'm really interested in the Joint Commitment initiative, where there's focus on inclusion and diversity. And specifically, I'd like to hear a bit more about potentially how you're engaging with journal publishers or stakeholders in the Global South within that initiative.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to start by saying that we do, thank you to Research for Life actually, because we have had Research for Life come and present to us at the Joint Commitment at one of our major meetings. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I think this is a really important point, and actually, I spoke earlier about the subgroups that we have, and one of the subgroups that I talked about and the one that I'm chairing is about the diversity of the working group, and there's two aspects that we're looking at there. The first is that we have individual members, so what's the makeup in terms of individual members, in terms of diversity, but the other one, and specifically to your point, is what is the diversity of our member organisations, and part of that includes where are they headquartered, basically, in the world, not just sort of satellite offices, although that plays a part. And so next year we're planning to do an audit of all of our member organisations to understand in more detail who they are as organisations, and part of that is where they're based. And from that, we are wanting to basically come up with initiatives to reach out to people who, A, don't currently know about us, but B, who might not typically be involved in this. So that might be member organisations from the Global South. It might involve reaching out to kind of industry groups in countries where we don't have representation. So it's going to take a lot of active effort, but that's something that we're looking at in our subgroup specifically heading into next year, and something that was actually born out of a workshop that we held with our members, where we talked about the fact that, looking around that room, we were a disproportionately, white, middle class, northern group of people, for example, and actually that if we want to make meaningful change, we have to get the right people in the room, and that means actively going out of our way to expand our member organisations and making that more diverse. So yeah, thank you for that question, but yeah, for 2024, watch this space.